remember your face and your memory.
All of you, bring me your leaders and throw them down. You will rule with me in the splendor of a new wasteland.
Which is the better Chris Hemsworth movie? Is it Furiosa, a Mad Max saga? Or is it Thor, Love and Thunder?
I gotta say Love and Thunder takes the cake.
It's a movie where he talks to a hammer.
Yeah. And then Furiosa, he's just talking.
Yeah. He's talking to everyone. Yeah. He doesn't care who's listening. I think we're gonna review Furiosa. Kaylin, I have a question for you. Do we want to do our normal format, or do you just want to kind of purge our thoughts on Furiosa?
I think since we are pretty fresh out of the theater watching this, I think we should probably just purge. And, let it rip.
Okay, so yes, we just both watched this late last night. It is the following afternoon, so we've had a little bit of time to think about it. And I think there's a lot to say. And I think the one thing I would kind of want to preface this conversation with is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Not a title I love, but it had a lot of expectations to fill. And that, I think, is going to be a lot of this conversation and all the like reviews and podcasts that I've already absorbed since watching it. That's kind of the through line is the previous movie, Mad Max Fury Road, which we've reviewed. It's on our perfect movie list. I think we both agree it's one of the best action movies ever put to screen.
Yes.
Those are big shoes to fill. It's a tough act to follow. And on one hand, when discussing this movie, I feel like it's kind of not fair to hold it up to the standard of that, to be like, hey, when you made one of those best movies of all time, why don't you just do that again?
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like a fair standard. On the other hand, it's a prequel. It's a sequel. It's the next one in line. And of course, you're going to get comparison when you're the next one in line. And I think that makes sense too. So I'm kind of two minds, at least on that kind of discussion. And I'm sure we'll get into it as we get into it. But
so I think part of it for me was like the marketing for this movie. If you watch any of the trailers, it really does kind of lean into like, oh, this movie is going to have the same type of like action as Fury Road did, the same type of pacing. It's just going to be a long chase sequence or a lot of like a compilation of a bunch of action scenes, and it's not. It does have those moments here and there, and I think that was like, for me, maybe I went in and my expectations were subverted a little bit, and I don't know. It's just this movie is taking me a long time to kind of digest. So, yeah, it's interesting.
When we discussed Mad Max Fury Road, you said something about Mad Max Fury Road, and you said it had the wrong title. It should have been called Furiosa, because Furiosa was the star of the movie, not Mad Max. Mad Max is kind of just a sidecar character that gets dragged along.
Like most of his movies.
Like most of the Mad Max movies. And I feel like this movie, I don't know if it was by accident or on purpose, or just maybe, Chris Hemsworth just killing it so much that they wanted more of him in it. To me, this feels like this could have been the Dementis and Gang movie.
Yeah.
And Furiosa is sidecar to it.
Right.
I think that's because of two things. Furiosa is that classic Mad Max archetype where she doesn't say a lot.
The silently motivated character that has like their own purpose into why they're doing what they're doing.
They say less and do more.
Yeah.
Both of those character archetypes. And I think it's kind of a strange fit for a movie that's 2.5 hours long, that isn't quite as action-packed as a lot of these Mad Max movies are.
Yeah.
And is really about, is supposed to be about her character. And it seems like maybe that just that archetype, I think, is maybe ill fit for this type of movie because it's episodic saga that does span like 20 years. Like Mad Max Fury Road is maybe a day and a half.
Yeah.
This covers, I don't know, we meet Furiosa when she's probably like 6, 7, 8 years old, and then into her like young adulthood.
And then also like the history of the world of Mad Max as well. We kind of get into because they showcase like a war that happens, and then you have all these different clans that are kind of going at each other, and then it's like the big citadels. So it's like the Citadel, then you have Gastown, and you have Bullet Farm, that kind of stuff. So
it feels like and I don't know if this is entirely true, although I think something like this happens because George Miller talked about how this whole story was like in mind, in concept, and he actually wanted to film this movie like back to back, like Lord of the Rings style, with Mad Max Fury Road. This movie feels like like imagine Charlize Theron. She signs on, she gets the script, and with the script, she gets a lore book and a bunch of concept art.
Yeah.
Mad Max Fury Road is the script, and this is the lore book and concept art, like come to life. I think both in the style of filming and then in just like what we choose to focus on, because we hear of all these places that become central hubs of the action in Furiosa. In Fury Road, we hear about Gastown. We hear about the Bullet Farm.
Yeah. Actually, the thing that probably reminds me the most of this, have you played the Mad Max video game from 2015?
I did.
Yeah, so I think this kind of reminded me the most of this, and it had that feeling of that world from the game, too, because you have characters like Scrotus, who makes an appearance in the game, and then, like, you get to see, like, Gastown and different stuff like that, so... yeah, it was interesting. I felt like they pulled a lot from the game as well.
Yeah, and there's just a lot more, like, it's an epic saga. It's more like a Lord of the Rings where we go to Rivendell and we go to this place and that place, and we see how they all interact. And this kind of just expands on mostly the characters that we already know from Mad Max Fury Road, except for Dementis and his gang, Chris Hemsworth's character, and expands and adds a lot of, I guess, text and makes real a lot of the things that are just kind of alluded to and up to your imagination. Yeah. Previous. And I think we talked about it on the way home. There was a conversation and it felt kind of negative. But I think a lot of that was like what I talked about up top about expectation versus reality, and how do we hold the standard of a movie? Because I think this is a good movie. It is not a great movie. It's somewhere between good and great, and is not like to the excellent, perfect, like the very, very 1% that Mad Max Fury Road is in. Right. But how do you reconcile the maybe slight disappointment with also being like, this is still a good movie, in my opinion, at least? So you mentioned something just a bit ago that I feel like kind of explains a lot of like my negative aspects of this film. Especially, so what you're saying was like when you have somebody kind of like spelling everything out for you, showing you all these things, it kind of takes away from the mystique of this world a little bit. Because in most Mad Max films, it's kind of all subjective, where it's like we don't really know if these events actually happened. We don't know if Max is a real person or not. He could just be some guy that people see him as like, this is the Road Warrior and this legend is kind of passed on. Max might not be a real person. And I think that's like what elevates this kind of like this story for me more, where it's like it's more of it's a folk tale, it's a legend. And then but then it's like in this you're adding all these like kind of, well, in this world it's like real world events and stuff. I just think it kind of takes away from the mystery and the allure of this franchise. I do think it suffers a bit from prequelitis, where it's like it is not anywhere near the quality of like Solo, a Star Wars story, or you like this movie more, but Rogue Squadron or Rogue One. Yeah. But those are both movies where I feel like one of the main pitfalls of them is that it's checking all these boxes of like things you've heard. Yeah. Things you know, offhand comments of, we're headed to the Bullet Farm, becomes, we are literally going to the Bullet Farm. We're showing you how the Bullet Farm operates. We're going to see exactly what it looks like. Yeah. And you're going to point at it and you're going to say, I know what that is. Yeah. And you're not just hearing about it. And I think, like, if you said Lord of the Rings, I think Lord of the Rings
does the opposite of that most of the time, where they mention things and they mention events without showing you, and I think it's just more effective for lore building and for just the world in general. I don't know if we want to get into full spoilers for this. I feel like we probably will.
We should probably wait a little bit before we get to spoilers.
Okay.
If we can, let's try to
delay
it as much as possible. But I mean, I think there's things that can be said about the movie without getting into spoilers. I feel like when we're saying they're building out the world, the one thing is, you say it takes away the mystique, but there's not a lot of situations I can think of where I was disappointed in what the answer was. Yeah. Like when it shows us Gastown, I'm like, that's grungier and bigger and weirder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
When it shows us the bullet farm and there's an action sequence in the bullet farm that's awesome, I think it's kind of the high point of the movie.
It's a great scene.
I'm not mad I'm there.
Sure.
You know?
I kind of like things to be left to the imagination a little bit. I don't know. It just feels real. Because, I mean, in real life, you hear about things and you don't see it all the time. You know what I mean? It really fleshes things out, in my opinion. But obviously,
one of the things you said in your car conversation is this necessary? And I think the answer can be no. And also, I still enjoy it and like it.
Right.
Because it's not necessary to spout all these things. We just watched this movie that we love for, the last 9 years or whatever.
Yeah.
That does not spell out all these things. I would be so interested in the thoughts of someone who had not seen Fury Road, and then they watch these in like sequential order, where they watch this prequel first, and then they move on to that.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting test case. I wish to go back to the Lego movie. Let's get a fresh child.
Yeah.
This is a reference to our Lego movie review. Get a fresh child, put it in front of these movies.
Yeah.
See what they think.
Put an Amish person in front of these movies. They'd probably explode.
Like, how is the perspective different when you don't have this other thing that you're automatically measuring it against that is just so amazing and so beloved already?
Right.
And this first reaction, didn't love it as much. I still like the strengths of Mad Max Fury Road are also largely here.
Yeah.
Particularly, I think, weird, freaky characters.
Yep.
Just weird lore that is so specific. I just love the world.
Yeah.
That we are in. The world is cool, and I don't feel like there's any huge missteps to me in the like portrayal of the crazy characters they choose to add or the crazy characters they choose to bring back.
And the dialogue too, it's so insane, and half the time people are just rambling and nothing is really coherent, but they understand each other, and it's like it's those little details that just add so much. Like
I love when we talked about Mad Max Fury Road, I love their little like bastardizations of English.
Yeah.
As things have moved on, and I love there's a scene in the beginning, not really a spoiler, where Dementis is tasting Furiosa's tears as she watches something awful.
Yeah.
And he goes to he has like sort of a scribe. They call him the words man, and he literally just has tattoos of words head to toe.
A history man or something like that.
Something like that. And he says his title. He says, brother, give me a word burger.
Oh yeah.
And then he starts just rattling off facts he knows about tears.
Yeah, it was like explaining the scientific term for tears and like different things, like what it consists of and stuff.
And I was so excited to figure out what a word burger was.
Yeah.
Like, what is this guy about to say?
Yeah. And this is all just regular stuff to them. You know what I mean? And that's what makes it so great because, it's awesome.
Or like, I think there's smart prequel-itis things that it does do because like, yeah, we do bitch and complain about the you showed me this thing I already know. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's when your movie seems wholly dedicated to that device, and that is like I think Ready Player One. Like that's a movie that exists to point to other things and say, don't you know what that is?
Right.
I don't know, like even Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah.
Like a lot of that has more to it. I do actually like the journey that the new Spider-Man goes on, but a lot of that movie's dedicated to, hey, look at that thing. You know what that is?
Well, the biggest perpetrator probably is the newer Star Wars stuff.
I was going to say The Flash.
The Flash, too. Yeah. Christopher Reeve's Superman and all that kind of crap. Yeah, for sure.
And that just feels like that is the part that's like clap, seals, clap. You know what that is?
Yeah.
This has some clap, seals, clap moment. There's one that I know you don't like that maybe is a bridge too far. I might agree. But like, I think a good version of that moment is we all know the War Boys and love the War Boys. And the first War Boy we meet in this is this guy with an arrow in his head and he thinks he's in Valhalla.
yeah, he's great.
And then the conversation Dementis' gang and him have where they're like, he's like, am I in Valhalla? And they're like, no. And then they're like, do you know where the green place is? Because they're in search of the green place. They're in search of the place of abundance, they say. And he's like, what's an abundance? Many good things. And just them like, because the war boys are stupid but dedicated.
Yeah.
Another great war boy touches the guy in the big tanker fight when he picks up he did not need to die. He picks up the dynamite that's about to explode and he could throw it away.
But instead he
picks it up. He shows the rig driver and he says, "Witness me."
Yeah, that's so great. Well, I love the scene too when Dementis and some spoilers, but Dementis, him and his army, they arrive at the Citadel and they're kind of confronting Immortan Joe, and they're trying to take over the Citadel, and then all the war boys are lined up on top of the cliff, and I guess one of Dementis' guys like points out some dude to like represent as a warrior or something, and then
because Dementis is doing all this flexing, he comes there and he's like, look at all my dudes, because he does have like 5,000 people on bikes. Like, it's insane. The scale of this movie. And I think that leans into maybe one of the weaknesses, which is some of the CGI is kind of ropey. But it's also because it's expanding the scale so much. Like, we really are getting, I'm bringing up Lord of the Rings, like Middle-earth size, like armies again.
Yeah.
Instead of like, 12-car convoys.
And then I think of that, I'm like, so the most valuable resource is gasoline. I'm like, you're using a lot of gasoline for all these fucking bikes.
For his 4-bike chariot?
Yeah, it's kind of a plot hole, but that's okay.
So they show up there and he's doing all this flexing and they're like, this is how we have our power. He says, pick one of our war boys, just anyone. And he points it to one. No, not you, this one. Yeah. And then he just gears up, grabs 2 of those like explosive spikes, and then like, witness me, and just
does his kamikaze.
Yeah. And he's like, we have like 800 more of those guys.
And then they're like, Dementis in his group is like, these dudes are crazier than we are. Let's get the fuck out of here. They're like, yeah, it's awesome. Shout out to young Furiosa. She was great. We spent a lot of time with her too. Mm-hmm. She had a lot of great scenes. I think that intro sequence when Furiosa's mother is kind of chasing after her because Furiosa gets kidnapped, that was a fantastic opening. And it's like 30 minutes. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, it's such a great opening.
It's a great opening. That it's just a longer trek than you'd think, and some of it I think works for and against the movie in the like long run when we're considering that this is supposed to be the Furiosa movie. I did like and was surprised that like the first, we're gonna go full spoilers. Spoiler alert! I think at this point
from here on out,
lids off. I did like that a third of this movie is not Anya Taylor-Joy. It is this child actor. Yeah. And she's being dragged around mostly by Dementis until she gets traded over to Immortan Joe. But I think it's both a strength that we get all this time, and like I love how this movie lets things breathe in a way. Like that opening action sequence is long. It is a trek across the desert with like a sniper in cover, like, and it's like a long, drawn out thing before Furiosa ends up in camp, and then we have this long period of them as a child. But I think the flip side of that is what we're getting is, we love Dementis. Yeah. He's who's jumping off the screen in this movie, largely because we have a passive, silent girl being like dragged around in a cage for the first 40 minutes. And I don't think that works in his favor when it tries to do the like handoff to Anya Taylor-Joy, and we really start getting to like her adult like drive and how she's like working her way up and all that, because I think the thing that we're missing Dementis, and I think you just come into being like, this is kind of, I don't know. There's still a lot of good stuff in there. I still love this world and the details, but she's just not the capturing character that even the Charlize Theron version of this.
I think she's too much like Max, which is like, I mean, in Fury Road, they kind of had that those similarities as well, but Furiosa had that drive. Like, we knew exactly what her motivation was, and that was the whole catalyst for that movie. Obviously, it's kind of the same thing in this, but you have a lot more breaks in between.
Yeah. It could be that sparse because the movie's all action.
Sure.
You don't have time to sit down and think about things. And this movie takes its time a lot more. There's a lot more space between various action scenes. There's a lot more just talking and political maneuvering and backstabbing and stuff happening.
But don't get it twisted. Furiosa is still an awesome fucking character.
True.
Anya Taylor-Joy, she knocked it out the park as far as like her mannerisms. She sounded just like Charlize Theron.
There's a couple times I was wondering if they piped in Charlize Theron's voice over her
That's what
because
I
it
thought,
sounded
too.
so good, especially the one scene where she's like, I need a car.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And her confrontation with Dementis as well.
Yeah.
Did you notice a little bit of CGI face on young Anya Taylor?
Yeah, it's very I mean, it's well done because I guess they start digitally altering this young girl's voice because the young girl looks more like 11. She looks like Millie Bobby Brown.
Yeah, yeah.
And then she slowly, like, her eyes move farther apart, and like her face starts transforming because they're doing some sort of digital trickery to like. And then they even do kind of like a young Captain America thing where I think they're minimizing Anya Taylor-Joy and making her smaller as they like make her like teenage.
She looked really tiny in the scene where she was like first starting to work on the war rig and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, the whole scene at the end was great with her confrontation with Dementis as well. Dementis he was an awesome character. I wanted to see more of him. I wish we had more screen time. I loved the fact that it was like we just saw this guy. He's just terrible. He's just like a terrible. I watched the Red Letter Media review of this, and they were just saying how like terrible of a villain he was, but in a good way, where it's like you just see like this guy just losing it, and nobody in his group really cares for him that much. They're kind of blindly following, but at the same time, he's just fucking up constantly, and he's always just batshit crazy. It was great, and I wanted to see more of that.
Because the menace comes from the fact that he's like not a well-balanced person, and then it's like, and then it's like when he's wrong, it's never because he's wrong. Like he clearly can't handle running Gastown. He eventually is the head of Gastown, and he's like not a good enough leader. He's probably just getting high or whatever on the top floor, like not doing his duties.
And then he looks out, he's like, okay, everybody, good job. And then he goes back in.
And then like when shit hits the fan, then it's everybody else's fault. It's
or either that or he reverts to like primal violence. You know what I mean? Speaking of which, the violence in this movie was shocking. Some of the scenes were incredibly violent, especially like some of the torture stuff that they would do, and even compared to Fury Road had some pretty gnarly stuff going on too. But in this one, there were some scenes where I was like squirming a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, all that stuff was great. I love the scene where they captured Furiosa and the other guy who worked on the war rig, and they were torturing him. They tied him to the back of a bike, and they're making him walk in a circle, and they're just riding around for hours doing that. And that was a great scene. It looked awesome too.
They hung Anya Taylor-Joy by her
fucked up arm,
because her arm, she has one hand in the next movie, so there, of course we see why it happens. And it's funny because you thought it was going to be like, oh, she has to get out of this situation in 127 hours herself, and she kind of, it's not clear whether she does that later on, but the first injury is she just has her arm out a window and a monster truck just fucking shreds it by rolling up right next to her.
Well, I thought they were going to cut off her arm because she had the tattoo of the map to her to the green place on that arm.
Yeah.
That's what I thought they were going to use to try to get to that. And it's funny because they never really went back. They never really tried to go to the green place after she kind of grew up. There was really no motivation for that other than Furiosa's character, obviously, but Dementis didn't really care. Nobody cared about the green place, really.
Well, I think only Dementis is the only one that really had the concept of it being there.
Well, his whole group did. They all knew.
But I think by the end, they're mostly killed off. Because, like, if you realize he has the rise and fall, because he starts on his, like, it's awesome. He has, like, a motorcycle chariot with, like,
that's great.
3 motorcycles lashed together that he rides around with in a little chariot thing. And then when he's at the peak of his power, he's upgraded to a 6-wheeled monster truck.
Yeah.
And then by the end, he's, like, a lone rider on a motorcycle.
Yeah.
And let's go all the way to the end. Because what do you think about the final scene? It is doing the upending of your expectations, I think, where it's not a big fight. It's a long talk. Well,
I love that scene. I thought it was great. I thought Chris Hemsworth really was showing his acting chops in that scene as well. And I think it was in service to the story, so I had no problem with that.
Yeah, and I really like Furiosa. when she keeps going back to give me my mom back in my childhood.
Yeah.
I want them back.
Yeah.
Give them back to me.
Right.
And, and he's right. Dementus is sitting there being like, I can't give you anything back. You can have your revenge and you may not even be satisfied,
I have a high pain threshold.
And I hated this line in the trailers, and I don't recall exactly how it comes up, but they make the line, but the question is, do you have it in you to make it epic?
Yeah.
They make that actually sing and be a great line, and I love that this is all happening in this, like, dusty hell, because there's just dust flying in the air at twilight, and it's just like this orange glow behind everyone as it's just these two lone souls hashing it out.
Yeah. So I think we went through most of the positives. Shall we get into some of the negative stuff, the things we had some issues with?
Yeah, go for it.
So this is probably my biggest one. I did not like the cameo appearance that we got. I thought it was very lazy, and it kind of, again, the whole mystique of this character. So if you have not seen it, just skip through this part. But we get an appearance from Mad Max himself. It's very short. He doesn't have any lines or anything. It's just kind of a wide shot, and you just see him off in the distance a little bit. And it's when Furiosa has like ripped her arm off this thing that she was being hung to, and she's like walking through the desert, and she collapses, and on the cliffside, Mad Max is looking over and he sees her on the ground. I thought that he brought her to the Citadel because there's some weird editing kind of in that scene where it shows that she's being dragged away on like a piece of sheet metal, and then she ends up in the Citadel again. And I thought that was alluding to that Max helped her. And so then I'm like, oh God, so now we have like some random reason to put Max in this movie and have them kind of cross paths, and it just felt like it kind of ruins the whole aspect of Fury Road itself a little bit for me. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking a little too deep on it, but I just had a lot of issues with that scene.
Yeah, the edit's weird. I think it's meant to more just be like a pull-out gag joke where it's just like, oh, look who's watching.
Yeah, Max is here. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
And I don't think and it is edited it's edited very hazily, which I assume is supposed to put you in like Furiosa's state of mind. That someone is dragging her back into town and it's not clear, but she wakes up in this den of like this like flesh growing lady that like grows.
She's harvesting maggots.
Yeah, from human flesh. And the implication I thought was she was dragged there by this lady, because I think that's what she does. She goes and she collects bodies. So she just assumed this was another body, and then she wakes up. But it is not really clear. That's also one of the most grossest, shocking parts of the whole movie.
Yeah, that was one of the nastiest things I've ever seen. It was gross. But that just kind of like, we talk about member berries, and I'm just like, we don't need that. You know what I mean? Like the point of Max's character is that I don't think he's real. Mm-hmm. Because all of these stories, they're folk tales. They're stories that are being told by people, and that's what it's alluding to, the whole purpose of like the Mad Max thing. Max is a catalyst into this world. He's not necessarily even the main character itself. So yeah, you can have a whole movie about Furiosa. You don't need Max. I just had an issue with that. I thought it was lazy. I thought it was just in service of fans and just to show, oh look, it's Max is here. He's been here the whole time. He's in this world. I just have a lot of issues with that. But it's not the biggest thing ever, but yeah.
I think one of my primary gripes, kind of a side tangent, have you seen, I think it's Mission Impossible Fallout. It is the one where Tom Cruise halo jumps out of an airplane from like 50,000 feet.
I have not seen a single Mission Impossible film.
Okay, so in that movie, of course, like Tom Cruise always does, he really did the stunt. He really did like learn how to halo jump, which is crazy. But then they decided that they needed to like up the ante, I guess. So instead of just him doing a halo jump, they added a bunch of CG storm to the background. So it all ends up looking fake, which it makes it like, why would you make him jump out of a plane to add all these effects on top of it that make it look like he's just doing a CGI stunt that you would do in a studio, you know? Yeah. And I think this movie sometimes falls into that category where I think they are doing there's more CG driving, like just vehicles that are computer generated, I think, in this movie. And then I think even when there are real stunts, to show the epic size of the wasteland, they kind of do all these digital extensions of the edge of the frame for everything, because I feel like the camera is always like 2,000 feet in the air, and then swooping down and in and around. It's just showing a grander scale, but by doing that, it kind of puts it into the desert from the end of the Flash movie.
For
That's
sure.
just very like kind of low detail, low res, and some of it looks hazy in a like painterly way, and sometimes it just looks not good.
For sure.
And I think it kind of takes away from any real stunts that are happening when they kind of extend the background like that with all this computer generated imagery, because it makes everything look more fake. Whereas I think in Fury Road, they just embrace the surrounding areas, and there is some of that CG extension stuff in certain spots, but it's not as common,
right,
as in this. And I think it just takes away a bit from the action when it happens. There are still many great action scenes, and they do stuff that's just so much more over the top that it's like you're never gonna do that in real life.
In real life, like the on the war rig, there's like a spinning. What are those called? Flails or something?
Like a flail.
Yeah, and they're spinning on the back and stuff, and they're just butchering people left and right, and it looks awesome. Actually, my favorite shot. There's a long shot of. So there's this other group of bikers or marauders or something, and they have parachutes and like gliders and stuff, and they're being towed by the back of like a motorcycle, and so there's a long shot of them flying, and then they're harpooning people. It looked so awesome, and that scene, I think that was one of the best scenes in the movie.
Yeah, that one is shown in one like TV spot that I couldn't look back up, but as soon as I saw that, I was like, I think this movie's gonna be rad.
Yeah,
because that looked awesome. So I think it's overall.
Oh wait, we forgot the music.
Yeah.
So we all remember Fury Road. It had a pulsating soundtrack. I think it was one of the most memorable aspects of that movie in the first place. That that it added so much intensity to the battles and to the car chases. But this movie was surprisingly silent for a lot of it, especially during the action films or the action scenes as well, where it was like there wasn't really you didn't feel that presence of the soundtrack in this one.
Yeah.
I think they did have that same kind of score,
it
like
came
sparsed
in, and out
in
sometimes.
Yeah. But I found it kind of jarring, maybe just because I had the expectation of Fury Road, and just remembering how much that soundtrack played a part to that film. I just found it surprisingly silent. But I think some scenes it worked really well, especially with the cars, because it's like the cars itself could be a score. You know what I mean? Just the pulsating, the nitrous fueled fury of these vehicles. And so I think it worked great in some parts, and then some parts I was like, oh man, I need a little bit more. I need a little bit more sound going on.
It's a strength in the like lone hunter sniper chase from the beginning, where there's like no score and it's just sniper crack out of nowhere.
Yeah,
this guy's down. There's other parts that it feels like it could have gotten a little, juiced up.
Because it's funny. At first, I thought there was something wrong with the showing that we went to, because I was like, why is this so quiet? But maybe I'll have to watch it again and see if there was something actually wrong with the theater we're in. But I'm kind of leaning towards it was probably filmed like that.
There was definitely a big dead projector.
Yeah.
The movie industry can complain that people aren't going to see their movies, but also if everything sucks everywhere, then why do people want to pay good money when they can just wait? If the movie flops, it's on digital in 3 weeks,
Yeah. Well, it's funny because there was actually a moment where the screen froze up for us, and there was like a collective gasp from the audience, like, what the fuck was that?
It was basically what happens occasionally in our podcast where my computer just stutters for a half second. That happened in the theater. So, yeah, that's not really a critique of the movie. It's just like we thought we'd found a good one, and I don't know. I don't know anymore. It's even hit or miss within this one theater.
We watched Dune Part 2 in this theater, and it was one of the best viewing experience we've ever had. And so we're like, okay, we got to keep coming back here, but we'll see.
Maybe Dune Part 2 is just that cranked up.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, 2 sci-fi movies this year based on sand. It's kind of crazy.
I saw a meme that was like, what team are you, Team Sand or Team Monkey? Because it was like that, and also the Fall Guy, which is mostly in the desert. And on the other side, it's Planet of the Apes, King Kong, and
Monkey Man.
Monkey Man, yeah.
We watched Planet of the Apes too. That was a decent movie.
It was all right.
I don't think we'll ever do a review on it, but
This, perfect comparison. We're sitting here comparing it to Fury Road. And we're like, nah, it doesn't have the juice.
yeah.
We're sit here and compare this to Kingdom of the
Planet
fall,
of the
the
Apes.
rise of the fall of the Kingdom of the Bump of the Log of the Planet of the Apes. Which one are you watching again? Furiosa. Easy.
Furiosa, yeah.
Easily. And I didn't mind the rise of the Kingdom of the fall of the Planet of the Large of the Orangutans. But it was just not, it didn't have the juice.
No.
It's got no Riz, kid.
Would you recommend Furiosa?
Hell yeah. I gave it like 4 out of 5 stars in a very like loving way. It's good. If you're going to see it, I'd recommend see it in the theater. I just saw some early numbers that it's kind of not quite reaching expectations. Long weekend, they're thinking it'll make like $30 million, 33 or something. And I think they were hoping for something closer to 50.
I think it's a perfect companion piece to Fury Road. I think if you want to watch these in like chronological order, because it's funny because most Mad Max movies don't work like that. This is the first Mad Max movie that's like it's a prequel, and so it directly leads into Fury Road.
Very tied into. Very tied into.
Even we have Charlize Theron at the end.
Yeah.
Putting the wives into the truck.
It's just like Rogue One.
Yeah, it is like Rogue One. Everything is Star Wars.
It's always Star Wars.
Everything is Star Wars.
Hey, remember when the Admiral guy in Rogue One, he lands his airplane like a mile and a half away and then walks all the way across to the farm to go talk to
yeah. But it was a great shot though.
to go walk to Hannibal.
It was to Hannibal. Yeah. It was a great shot. Come on.
That movie's okay. I'd rather watch if I'm going to rewatch a Gareth Edwards movie, I'm going to watch The Creator before I watch Rogue One.
Really, I did not. I wasn't a big fan of The Creator.
I like The Creator way better.
Yeah, definitely check out Furiosa. If you haven't watched Fury Road, watch Fury Road too. They're both fantastic. Let's shout out George Miller, number one. This guy is like 80 years old, and he's still making movies like this that are relatively groundbreaking. Yeah. So it's pretty impressive.
He's an excellent,
give him his flowers.
Excellent action filmmaker. He's got a lot of unique zest, and sometimes he's like, "Fuck it, I'm making Happy Feet. I'm making Babe Pig in the City."
Wow, that's a great filmography right there. Like
Babe Pig in the City, Beyond Thunderdome, you know?
Fury Road.
Like, what a guy.
That's awesome.
He's like, I'm gonna make a movie where Robin Williams is like a scat man. There's all kinds of racist accents. That was like his whole vibe. R.I.P. Anyways.
R.I.P.
Yeah, George Miller's sick. Watch this movie in a theater. If you're going to watch this and Fury Road, if you haven't seen them, I'd recommend see this first and then go watch Fury Road.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't know. I wouldn't do that personally.
I just mean so you're going in ascending order of goodness.
Yeah, that's true. And then you end it off on something that's like mind-boggling. You know? Yeah.
So, I think we're going to call it. Martin Scorsese May continues. Look forward to that.
Yep. Next film coming up is going to be Shutter Island.
Yeah. Shutter Island, then Silence, then on to Joel and Ethan Coen Jr.
Oh, my God.
We're just doing all the faves here.
Michael's favorite.
Okay. See you next time.
You don't have to do it just because he tells you.
What choice does she have?
He's not gonna hurt us. He needs us.
Why?
To bargain.
Oh, he'll hurt us, all right.
Do you think he's coming to the green place?
Never. He's a crazy smeg who eats schlanger.